What's up, Duels? I'm Ashton or SmashtonYGO, and we need to talk about this. So a few days ago, the Yu-Gi-Oh community kind of went on fire on Twitter because of a user named Papa Mutt, who is a VTuber and Twitch streamer who mostly does casual, like just chatting content and a few games here and there. But they decided to go ahead and throw their hat in the ring and poke the bear a little bit and talk about their experience playing Yu-Gi-Oh, specifically on Master Duel. So they made a Twitter post where they essentially said, hey, it's my first time playing Yu-Gi-Oh in years. And they said, and I quote, "Good lord, this game is awful." And they went on to go ahead and complain about like a 37-minute combo where they were able to do something completely different in the meantime, came back, the combo was still going, and then they died on their first turn and essentially compared Yu-Gi-Oh to Solitaire. So I wanted to make this video a sort of a response not only to this post, but also to kind of just talk about Yu-Gi-Oh as a card game in general, and where I think criticism does and does not work against this card game. Because let's be honest, even though it's a game we all love, if you're watching this video, you probably enjoy it or at least have had a history with it in your childhood, it's definitely not a perfect game. However, I think there are certain ways that you can criticize the game without sort of shooting yourself in your own foot, like I think Papa Mutt might have done here unintentionally. So just really briefly, Yu-Gi-Oh's been a big part of my childhood when I was younger, but I gotta be honest, I was with the camp of people like Papa Mutt and some of the other people like the Act-Man and stuff like that who used to think Yu-Gi-Oh was super cool, but then they added all of these new elements to it like synchro summoning, XEs, links, pendulums, and thought that it all went straight downhill and I couldn't get into it anymore. But as you can see now, Yu-Gi-Oh is a huge part of my life. I just had a conversation with my partner the other day where we were talking about what our probably most number one, number two, number three hobbies are. And mine literally went like video games is number one because they've been with me since, you know, the very beginning before I even knew how to think. Number two would be Yu-Gi-Oh because I live and breathe it now. I have a whole YouTube channel about it. I'm trying to make it grow and build a community around it and play it all the time. And then number three is history, which I literally got my degree in. And that really only started, Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of like a recent passion of mine for the last 2 years. The first year was really like me just dipping my toes in the waters, playing some of the older formats and ramping myself up while playing with my best friend TJ in order to really appreciate the modern game. Then over the past year, I've been going to locals, I went to a regional, I've made this YouTube channel, and I've come to love this game even more, which is why I want to talk about this. It's why I wanted to make this video. And this isn't supposed to be an attack on Papa Mutt or anybody else who doesn't like Yu-Gi-Oh. If you don't like Yu-Gi-Oh, that's perfectly fine. Not every game is for everybody. This video is specifically to talk about what happened with Papa Mutt and where I think sort of both sides can learn from what happened. So firstly, I want to start off just by addressing the fact that one of the first things that Papa Mutt says in the post is, "Good lord, this game is awful." You're never going to start off good on a community that is as passionate as Yu-Gi-Oh's community is by just straight up smacking them in the face and saying their game is awful. Now, does that justify them getting DMs and people screaming at them in the comments and all this other stuff? No, of course not. You shouldn't do that. And if you do that, you're awful, you're stupid, you're dumb, you make us all look bad. Stop doing that. If you're just criticizing them or you're kind of having a discussion about it, even some light arguing, stuff like that, that's perfectly fine. But insults and stuff like that, come on, dude, grow up. But with that out of the way, they go on to talk about this 37-minute combo. Now, combo decks are a thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! That's just something that you have to accept. However, combo decks aren't all the be-all, end-all in Yu-Gi-Oh! Sometimes you'll go up against somebody in Master Duel who's playing a really long combo deck. Sometimes you won't. That's just kind of the way the game is. Is it bad? Is it good? That's kind of for you to decide, but not every deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a combo deck. There will be combos in it, but how long that combo lasts can vary greatly by deck. For example, Sword Soul can have some nice boards with very small combos, right? Not a lot of steps. Meanwhile, something like Agnister, if it wants to get to its main boss monster, the Arrival Cybers, it can take a minute. But you don't need to play those decks that are combo decks if you don't like them. And if you go up against them, there's two things really to bring up here that I think Papa Mutt just doesn't really address. and that I think would help if you're a new player trying to get into the game and you're facing one of these things. The first thing is kind of just the realization that it's gonna happen, right? There's floodgate decks, which completely stall the game and just grind it to a halt. And then there's combo decks, which speed up the game and make it keep going. That's a thing like in anything, especially anything competitive, any kind of competitive game. Magic has decks that are like that, especially in Commander, where a lot of things are legal. There are decks in Commander where if you play a high enough level of Commander, well, you can combo off into turn one and just win the whole game through a resource loop. If you're playing a competitive shooter like Apex or Overwatch or something like that, you're going to have some games where you and your team just don't vibe and it's not very fun because you're getting your butt kicked and there's nothing you can do about it, but that's just part of the game. You move on to the next one. The other thing is hand traps and interactions, right? This whole idea that your opponent is going to combo off in every game and you're just going to sit there and stare at them does not happen all the time if you know what a hand trap is. Unfortunately for Papa Mutt, I don't think they were playing very many hand traps, if any at all, based on what I've seen in the Twitter posts. I think the deck they were playing is a little bit suspicious, but we'll get to that later. But the thing you have to realize is Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not the same game that it was when it first came out. The same amount of interactions that used to happen with Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the day over the course of like 5 to 10 turns now just happens in turn 1. You see the big difference being that in old Yu-Gi-Oh! You would set your monster or normal summon your monster, maybe you'd have a trap hole, or you would have some kind of battle trick, or you would have an MST or a mirror force, and you would set that as your back row and pass the turn, and that'd be that, right? But if you really think about it, let's say you have a Raikou set, right? That when flipped up, it can destroy something. You have a bottomless trap hole that when your opponent summons a monster, if it has 1500 or more attack, you can flip it up and banish it. And you have a mirror force, which if your opponent attacks, you can flip it up and destroy all of their attack position monsters. That is 3 different points of interaction that you have set up on your board. That's not all that different from Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. It's just different kinds of interaction. Let's take Sword Soul as an example. A standard Sword Soul board will have 3 main things going on. A Baron de Fleur, which is an Omni Negate, a Chi-Xiao, which is a monster negate, and a Blackout, which can pop 2 monsters on your opponent's side of the field. Just like the previous example where you have Raikou, Bottomless, and Mirror Force as 3 interactions, you have Baron, Chi-Xiao, and Blackout as 3 interactions. What we're really talking about is in our hand with hand traps. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, Droll and Lockbird, Nibiru, Effect Veiler, Imperm. These cards really take the place of those trap cards that you used to set on the field and are now just in your hand ready to go whenever the conditions are met. Now, there will still be games where you don't have the Ash or you don't have the Droll or whatever hand trap that you need. You really will have no interaction, but they used to happen in old school Yu-Gi-Oh! All the time too. Sometimes you just didn't see the Mirror Force or the Bottomless, right? It's really no different. It's just instead of having to wait multiple turns, all the stuff is happening at once on turn 1 and 2. The interactions haven't changed. The how of the interaction works is really the big thing that has changed. So of course with Pop 'em Up, based on the deck they were playing, doesn't look like they did a lot of interactions. So that is twofold. That is 1 on Pop 'em Up for not playing any hand traps, but 2, it is a genuine problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole in not teaching you what a hand trap is anyway. Master Duel should be notorious for not having a good tutorial. It teaches you how to set, it teaches you how to increase a monster's attack in battle, and then it's like, go for it, go ranked, you know what I'm saying? And that is not how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is played anymore. Master Duel should have an entire tutorial section teaching you about hand traps and Omni Negates and breaking boards and stuff like that, and it doesn't, and that is a major flaw of Master Duel, and we have to accept that. When this conversation really takes a turn, though, is when you read the second post and start to dig into the weeds a little bit. You see, when Raron's stuff was going on, the Hearthstone player and streamer who tried Yu-Gi-Oh!, I think it genuinely spawned a lot of good conversation. It, of course, had its own toxicity to it, true, and I've already addressed that, where if you're doing that, don't do that. You make everybody look bad, you make Yu-Gi-Oh! Look bad, you make yourself look bad, you need to grow up. But I also think it did spawn a lot of cool stuff, right? And a lot of really, really important conversation, not just on Twitter or in YouTube comments, but also in more videos, right? I'm thinking of just collabing with Farfa or Simo or MBT's video where he went really real about the flaws of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Master Duel. Or even the RJB0, who made an entire video on casual formats that fans have made that you can try with your friends to try to get into the game. And I think that was really important because that video, if you haven't seen it already, check it out. That's how I got into the game. The thing that got me back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Was Simo's progression series with Gage or Nim Nim. I started watching that series and got really into it, seeing all these old cards that I used to like as a kid and seeing how they were actually played and playing them well and stuff like that. And so me and TJ started playing progression ourselves, doing our own progression series just between the two of us. And that's how I got into Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, was playing that, really learning how the game works slowly over time. And here I am now playing competitively, and I just recently won a locals the other day for the first time and felt great about it. So I think those kinds of conversations are super healthy and super good for the community. It's good for the game, and it's something we should definitely encourage. The problem is Papa Mutt's post did not spawn that kind of conversation. It spawned much more negativity. There's probably a lot of reasons for that, but I think the biggest reason is going to be in how Papa Mutt kind of presented it. The problem that Papa Mutt's post has is that their main complaint was that it felt like solitaire for the opponent, right? Where they just had to sit there and stare at a combo deck for a long time, didn't have any pieces of interaction, and just died. But when you dig into it a little bit deeper, you come to realize that Papa Mutt's deck was an FTK, and not even a good one. They were playing some variant of a Royal Magical Library FTK or Exodia, or both. And so it makes it a lot harder to take Papa Mutt's criticism seriously when they're going to, on one hand, complain about long combos and long turns, and then turn around and immediately play a low interaction FTK deck that spends a long time on its first turn. It would be different if they were playing, like, let's say, a modern deck that is even just kind of decent, like a Dark Magician, or even a deck that might take a little bit like Punk or Salamangreat or even Adignister, right? It'd be different if they were playing one of those because they heard it was decent and they wanted to try it out and still had that complaint. It'd be different if they said, oh, I felt like I was playing the whole time, but my opponent never got to play, and that was a criticism. That'd be a little bit different. But in this scenario, I think that's what really bothered people in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. It wasn't so much the criticism itself, and more so the things surrounding it. Do I think Master Duel should do a better job teaching Yu-Gi-Oh? Yes, absolutely, undoubtedly. Master Duel is going to be the main way that people learn about Yu-Gi-Oh and try to get into Yu-Gi-Oh for the first time for the foreseeable future. It is huge. That's what people are going to go to. It's like flashy, it's cool, it's pretty. It has a decent monetization system. That's where people are going to go. And Master Duel should do a better job teaching people how to actually play the darn card game. But do I also think it's fair to call it an awful card game because of long turns while also playing a cheesy and, quite frankly, bad FTK? I don't think that's fair either. Now, I'd like to give Papa Mutt the benefit of the doubt, and maybe they just thought an FTK was the only way to win Yu-Gi-Oh at all because turns take forever, and they thought maybe that using an FTK that wins turn 1 and doesn't really interact with the opponent was the only way to win. I hope that's not the case, but if that is, then I can give them the benefit of the doubt and just say, hey, try it again, right? Like, try to pick something that actually uses hand traps and actually interacts. I would honestly recommend Sword Soul, right? It's really simple. You summon a thing, reveal a thing in hand, make a token, synchro, you're done, right? I would recommend that, right? Just play something that's easy to learn, even Dark Magician if you want to, who cares? Whether or not they're ever going to return to Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't know. Well, this is probably a situation where they're never going to return to it again. And that's really unfortunate because Yu-Gi-Oh is a great card game. I think Yu-Gi-Oh is an amazing card game. It's the only one I really care about anymore. It's the only one that's kept my attention for this long. It's the only one that's engrossed itself into my life for as much as it has. And I obviously want it to grow. I want it to get better. I want people to see it the way I see it. And right now, these conversations keep popping up more and more. We see not only Raron, we not only see Papa Mutt, but we see shareholder meetings where this conversation is popping up. We see people on Twitter all the time talking about trying to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's just not working for them. And I think that's really unfortunate, and I think it's something Konami really needs to figure out and fix. And again, before I end off this video, I want to say this is not an attack on Papa Mutt. I think we can both learn from this as the Yu-Gi-Oh community, and also just people who aren't in the Yu-Gi-Oh community, where there are valid forms of criticism, but you kind of don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by criticizing the game for something, but clearly having a lack of understanding of sort of the deeper mechanics in the game. It'd be better if there was a little bit more research gone into it, or just a little bit of like criticizing Master Duel itself for the way it treats tutorials, than criticizing the entire card game itself. And maybe just don't play Magical Library FTK. That's not even a good FTK. Like Gemini FTK or something. Like, come on. What do you guys think about Yu-Gi-Oh, modern Yu-Gi-Oh, all the stuff that's been going on with the whole conversation surrounding new player experiencing Yu-Gi-Oh? Comment down below. Let me know if you play any other card games. Let me know how you got into those. Like if you picked up any One Piece, or if you've been getting into Lorcana or anything like that. Let me know down below how the new player experience is for those. I'd love to read your thoughts. Also, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button so I know that you want to see more discussion content, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.